Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Quite a build-up, I think, there. Welcome to the 156th Annual General Meeting of the Hinckley Rugby Building Society. I'm very sorry that I'm not able to be with you in person in Hinckley this evening, but unfortunately I tested positive for COVID last week, and I'm following guidelines to remain isolated for 10 days. I'm particularly unhappy that I'm not there, as I understand there's cake on offer at the meeting. So tonight's meeting will be a hybrid one, with some members attending in person in Hinckley and others joining the meeting online. However you participate in the meeting, you are very welcome. My name is Colin Franklin and I am chairman of the Society. Also with us this evening are the Society's directors, whose details you will see in the annual review, which we sent to you recently, together with Carl Pountney from the Society's external auditors, KPMG, and Lee Whitaker from the independent scrutineers, Howsons. The format of the meeting this evening is slightly different depending on whether you are at the meeting or attending online. If you are online, you will not be able to vote tonight. The online voting deadline was the 26th of March. If you are at the meeting in person, you will be able to cast your votes this evening. And those votes will be added to those already received, and we will announce the results later in the meeting. You will be able to put questions to the meeting either by typing online or by raising your hand if you're in the room. And we've earmarked the final session of the meeting to answer any questions that have been raised. Following my introduction, our agenda is in 5 parts. Firstly, Colin Fife will present his review of the year. Secondly, Maggie Long, the Society's secretary, will then read the formal notice of the meeting and invite you to vote on each of the resolutions at the AGM. And while the votes are being counted, Colin Fife will then give a presentation to our charities. And we're delighted to have with us this evening representatives of 6 charities and 3 hospices, all local to Warwickshire and Leicestershire. And following that presentation, Maggie Long will then share with us the results of the voting, and finally we will address any outstanding questions which have been raised. Before we begin the proceedings, the Secretary has confirmed the following apologies: Ken Owen, Elizabeth Owen, George Browning, Gillian Browning, and Andrew Tampion. Now, as mentioned, Colin Fife will be reflecting on the past year in more detail, but I wanted to start by just saying a few words. Firstly, of how proud I am to be chair of an organisation that genuinely cares. And despite the difficulties we've all faced over the past couple of years and the growing financial pressures in the country, The Society has always put the interest of its members and colleagues first, and we will continue to do so. And I always remind our members that the job of this board is to oversee the running of the Society on behalf of its members, its borrowers and its savers, not on behalf of outside shareholders or anyone else. I'd like to recognise the whole team at the Society for their sterling efforts, particularly during the difficult COVID period. And on behalf of the members, I'd like to thank them sincerely. Now, after a period during which the Society took a very cautious approach to lending, whilst concentrating on improving profitability, our immediate focus will be to grow the Society, whilst doing everything we can to support our saving and borrowing members and the local communities in which we operate. So just before we move on to Colin's review, I'd like to remind you about the invitation to submit questions at any time during the meeting. And now let me pass you on to our Chief Executive, Colin Fife, for his review of the year.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our members, our colleagues and our friends who've either joined us this evening in our head office or are joining us online. It's my pleasure to run through my memories and the highlights of 2021 and reflect on what our staff have achieved. It was not the year that we expected. We were in lockdown in some shape or form for most of 2021. However, the Society responded with continued focus on members, on staff, and in our communities. Over 20 members of staff joined us and fitted right into our culture over the last year, and during that time, never set a foot in any of our offices. We were cautious during the pandemic, particularly with our lending appetite, and that did constrain some of our lending, but in favour of profitability. As we saw the end of lockdown approaching, we made a decision that our branches would continue to close at 2 p.m. And I know that a couple of our members are here tonight in our head office, and we had a good discussion about the rationale for doing so. But since that time, we've had a lot of positive feedback about the opportunity to have a private appointment in the afternoon in our branches after 2 p.m. We've had some really positive feedback about that opportunity for privacy in those private appointments in the afternoon. We've accelerated our community programme, where our team are in high demand from schools in Leicestershire and Warwickshire, very keen to take advantage of our understanding of financial literacy. As I said earlier on, today is the official launch of the Hinckley and Rugby Building Society Community Foundation. It's a really proud moment. It's been a personal ambition of mine. It brings together the values of the community foundations and also the building societies. Two values that are very, very closely linked. More of that later. So I'll move on to the first slide. And strengthening has been very important for our building society. The strengthening of our people, the strengthening of our capability, the strengthening of our resilience, the strengthening of our governance. And that strengthening has come through loud and clear in our financial performance in 2021. A substantially increased profit before tax at 1.44 million. And a lot of hard work over a number of years to get to that point. If I move to the next slide, one of the key reasons for that has been a focus on our net interest margin, which also grew very healthily in 2021. Now, a performance like that is vital as we strive to improve the services for our members, to employ the best quality staff that we possibly can, and to continue to invest in the organisation and its future. And if I move to the next slide, you'll see that our capital ratio, perhaps one of the most important measures of any financial organisation, has strengthened very well in 2021 as a result of that improved profitability. And the next slide, our funding. Our funding continues to be strong. We are so very well supported by our members, particularly in Leicestershire and Warwickshire. And those members have stood by this society for many, many years. You'll notice in the 2021 bar, the £60 million. That is the funding from other institutions, the Bank of England, particularly in this scenario. And you'll see that we have been more and more focusing on the funding and our members and encouraging them to increase their savings with Hinckley Rugby. If I move on to the next slide, I'll talk to you about some of the highlights for myself in 2021. So as well as strengthening this business, we've also concentrated on the broader strategies of Hinckley Rugby. Strategies such as our diversity and inclusion strategy, which we approved as a board in February 2022. Our climate strategy, which is helping us to work with our local communities and be a business that leads the way around how we manage and address climate risk. Our ESG strategy, environmental, societal and governance strategy, and how we act as a responsible business and support others to do the same. And our mental health and well-being strategy, which was a priority for the organisation before, but particularly during the pandemic. What makes me so proud about talking about those strategies is that they're led by our staff. Every one of those committees is staffed by our core staff team and is led by a member of staff of this building society. Not a board member, not an executive, but a member of our team who is passionate about those subjects and is helping this society to modernise and embrace the future. In climate, we see a real opportunity to lead in our sector and be an organisation that embraces green thinking and opportunities. I was really fortunate to represent the Building Society and present to COP26 about what this Building Society is doing to support its members and its communities in the future around green finance. One of our colleagues works with the government on the plans to support retrofitting of residential and investment properties. We are leading the other 42 building societies on a strategy that will help our sector to support the consumers of the UK to think about the energy efficiency of their properties. And we're also chairing the Hinckley and Bosworth Business Support Group on how we as businesses can think about climate and address any issues. We've also in 2021 looked at investment in people that I've talked about earlier on, but investment in the services and the technology that we use. So we upgraded our core system in 2021 so that we can use that to provide better and quicker services in the future. We introduced a new phone system. Our phone system was perhaps past its best, and we now have a cutting-edge digital system that can do more things than probably I will ever be able to use. We also introduced live chat, which is becoming a really strong communication method for particularly young people, and that has really taken off in the society. And lastly, in 2021, and one thing I'm particularly proud of, in 2020, when the government and the Financial Conduct Authority launched the mortgage payment deferral scheme, we received 600 requests from our members to support them through the pandemic. 600 members who needed our support. And I'm delighted to say that at the end of that scheme, there was only one of our members who needed a further level of support, and we have provided that for them. That is what this building society is here to do. We have done it through the pandemic, and we will continue to do it for the years to come. If I move now to slide on 2022, we're back in the office. We're back in the office, but we are embracing a hybrid world. We're able to offer our staff the ability to work differently, to reduce some of those travelling times, and we're embracing a modern method of working, which is helping our staff and is helping the society. We're also ready for growth. Our book has an excellent asset quality. It's well capitalised and it's well funded. We've had excellent support from our board. I was talking today to our core system provider about a contract to upgrade many of our services, a new front end for our members to use digitally, a new front end for our mortgage brokers to use digitally, an app for our savers, the resilience by moving our technology into the cloud, and a state-of-the-art website, which we will deliver in 2022. There are challenging economic conditions ahead, a looming cost of living crisis, rising interest rates, but we will continue to focus on supporting our members through these challenging times. We'll also continue to invest to support the environment. It will take 111 solar panels to cover the roof of our head office that I'm sitting in today in Hinckley, and we've signed the contract to do that. We'll also be offering electric vehicle charging points for our staff at the rear of our premises, but also for our members at the front of our premises. Our high street presence will continue. Although I talk about digital investment, our high street branches are the cornerstone of our business. They are here to stay. We are here to stay on the high street. And lastly, I'd like to pay tribute to Dean Waddingham, who is here tonight for his last AGM with the Society. In a couple of months, Dean will retire from his executive role as Chief Customer Officer at Hinckley Rugby, and it's been a pleasure to work with Dean. It's been a pleasure to get to know Dean, and we wish him well in his retirement, and we're sure that he won't be a stranger to Hinckley Rugby Building Society. So thank you very much. I will now pass over to Maggie Long, our Company Secretary.
Thank you. I'll start by reading the notice. Notice is hereby given that the 156th Annual General Meeting of the members of Hinckley Rugby Building Society will be held on the 29th of March 2022 at 6 p.m. for the following purposes. I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions on any of the resolutions, or if you have any questions for the report and accounts, either ask them online or you can put your hand up and we can take the questions at the end. Also, once I get through reading the resolutions, you'll be able to cast your vote if you've not done so already. Number 1 is to receive the Director's report and annual accounts and annual business statement and the Auditor's report for the year ended 30 November 2021. Number 2 is to consider an ordinary resolution to reappoint KPMG LLP to hold office as Auditor of the Society until the conclusion of the next Annual General Meeting. Number 3, to consider an ordinary resolution to approve the directors' remuneration report for the year ended 30 November 2021. Item 4 is to vote on the re-election of the directors as follows. To A, to re-elect Janine Bell. B, to re-elect Colin Franklin. C, to re-elect Colin Fife. D, to re-elect John Mulvey. E, to re-elect Barbara Teed. F, to re-elect Dean Waddingham. G, to re-elect Gary Wilkinson. H, to re-elect David Woodward. I, to re-elect Nemini Wynne Evans. And then special resolution is item number 5, which is to adopt the model rules for building societies, 7th edition, as presented on the Society's website. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask about the resolutions or the report and accounts? No, I think that's good. I'll hand back over to you, Colin, for the community update. If anyone wants to hand in their votes now, do you want to make yourselves known so that Lee from Howsons can come and collect your votes? No, I believe that means everybody has had the chance to vote. Yes. Okay, over to you,
Thanks,
Colin.
Maggie. I'm going to stand up for this next one. I hopefully have explained the importance of the Hinckley and Rugby Building Society Community Foundation to everyone today. And when we thought up the idea, we wanted it to be very much about our staff participating, about our staff telling us what do they want us to get behind. So we asked and received 134 votes from our staff that said these are the key categories that we would love this community foundation to support. We then voted on a wide list of local charities and social organisations, and tonight we're joined by representatives of those organisations to receive the first ever grants from our community foundation. I'd like to thank Katie Green, who's here tonight and who's the Chief Executive of Leicestershire and Rutland Community Foundation and has worked with us in partnership on this. And as I said earlier on, very, very close linked values in the way that a community foundation and a building society work. So let me tell you a little bit about the organisations who are the recipients of our first grants. Feed the Need Colville, an organisation I was talking earlier on about how much these services are in demand, and obviously an independent food bank based in Colville, serving people in need in the Colville area. And I know from talking to the representative tonight that that is a need that's very high and we suspect is going to grow. So we're delighted to support your organisation. Hospice Hope, Hospice Hope again based in Leicestershire. Hospice Hope works within North West Leicestershire, providing a range of support to individuals who have a condition that leads to a reduction in the quality of life or who have been diagnosed with a life-limiting condition, as well as offering support to their partner or carer. I'm sure we can all understand our staff's rationale for getting behind Hospice Hope. Helping Hands Community Trust, again based in Leicestershire. Helping Hands is a local charity which helps anyone whose life is in crisis. It provides a free advice service on welfare, benefits, debt, housing, employment and family law, as well as mental health support to those who need it. Let me move on to Warwickshire. The Nuneaton Men and Women in Sheds. I was hearing earlier on this evening that it used to be Nuneaton Men in Sheds, but great to hear that it's men and women in sheds now. The group's aim is to provide a safe environment in which to make things for the local community. Learning and sharing is key. So making those goods a real prime focus of the men and women. It also helps with chatting, socialising, helping to reduce the feeling of isolation and loneliness. And we were talking earlier on about how the gentlemen have got a project to fit out the seating of a bus in one of the Nuneaton schools, and maybe we can do some financial education in that school, Andrea. So that would be a big collaboration. Volunteer Friends, again based in Warwickshire. The mission is to serve the community by encouraging friendships, considering combating isolation, and celebrating independent living. Their aim is to encourage independence, increase social rehabilitation, promote well-being, and provide stimulating activities for local people. And last but not least, the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust, again, as you would imagine, based in Warwickshire. Warwickshire Wildlife Trust is the leading local independent conservation organisation. Its mission is to bring people closer to nature and create a land rich in wildlife. It is working to bring about nature's recovery across Warwickshire, Coventry and Solihull through practical action, education and influencing behavioural change. Can you join me in congratulating those organisations who are benefiting from it? I'm sure there's plenty of clapping online. And we've had a long association with local hospices, and you may know that we have a saving account which pays an interest rate to the saver, but also pays an interest rate to the 3 local hospices. And we love to hand out the cheques annually and thank those hospices for the service that they give to our communities. The 3 hospices are Loris, based in Leicestershire, the Mary Ann Evans, based in Warwickshire, and also the Myton Hospice, based in Warwickshire. The Myton can't be with us this evening, but can I invite the representative from Loris and Mary Ann Evans out to receive these cheques. I think we've got a photograph over here. So let's come that way. More smiling.
Yeah, please. Fabulous. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. And we have one for our good friends in Loris. Thank you. Thanks very much. It's a really important activity for us. Our hospice account continues, and we've built up a little fund in our community foundation that we will be looking to share with other organisations in Warwickshire and Leicestershire this year and for many, many years to come. Thank you. Back to Maggie Long.
Hello again. Okay, we have the results from the voting. They are as follows. Item number 1, to receive the annual report and accounts, was 98.36% in favour. We have item number 2, to reappoint KPMG as the auditors. We have 94.93% in favour. We have item 3, to approve the directors' remuneration report. We have 91.14% in favour. Those 3 ordinary resolutions are carried. We then have the re-election of the directors. So we have to re-elect Janine Bell. We have at 95.22%. The resolution is carried. We have to re-elect Colin Franklin at 95.72%. The resolution is carried. To re-elect Colin Fife, 95.9%. Resolution is carried. To re-elect Barbara Teed, 95.5%. The resolution is carried. To re-elect Dean Waddingham at 94.89%. The resolution is carried. To re-elect Gary Wilkinson, 94.67%. The resolution is carried. And to re-elect David Woodward, 94.92%. The resolution is carried. To re-elect Nemini Wynne Evans, 94.93%. The resolution is carried. And to re-elect John Mulvey, it's 94.94%. 0.84%, the resolution is carried. The last resolution is the special resolution to adopt the model rules, and that is at 96.62%. The resolution is carried. So all resolutions have been carried. That's the end of the results, which then takes us on to members' questions. So does anyone in the room have a question? Yes. Denise, have you got a microphone?
My name is Alison Brown, and I would like to know, now that the country is beginning to return to normal, is there any evidence...
Alison, there's a microphone.
Sorry. My name's Alison Brown. Now that the country is beginning to return to normal, is there any evidence that footfall to the branches is returning to pre-pandemic levels?
It's a very, very good question, Alison. We've been watching that footfall very, very closely, and I'll ask our head of branches and savings in a second to comment. We haven't seen it fully return to the pre-pandemic levels. We have seen it grow from the levels it had during the pandemic. And we suspect that there will be people who are either still a little bit reticent to perhaps leave home or visit the branches, or there may be some of our members who have adopted different practices during those 2 years. Whatever that leaves in terms of our footfall, I would say that we are absolutely committed to our branches. They're the absolute cornerstone of our organisation, and it would feel as if we were moving away from our core values if we decided that we would do anything else other than offer that service locally. But Andrew, would you like to take the microphone, and you probably need to come over here where the microphone.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Andrew Bell, Head of Branches and Savings. And just to expand slightly on what Colin has said, we are seeing footfall increase. I would say we're still about between 30 and 40% down, particularly on Saturdays, where we're seeing a little bit more of a slow return. I do actually attend a branch UK forum for building societies, and on average, ranging from the representatives of these building societies, it is very much the norm. Some are still down by about 50% because members have adapted, depending on the sophistication of their technology with some building societies. But we are slowly seeing the return, but I would say we're still about 30% back to normality prior to the pandemic.
Thanks, Andrea. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Alison.
Okay, we've had some questions online prior to the meeting. So this question is in two parts. The first part of the question, and I think Colin Franklin was going to start answering the questions, Colin, so I hope you're ready. First part is diversity on the board. It is 100% white. What steps are being taken to increase diversity and therefore attract far richer experience and input? Are you there, Colin?
Yes, thank you very much. And I think the question is from Adam Bolton. Am I right in saying? So thank you, Mr. Bolton, very much for the question, which is a very good one. The board does take inclusion and diversity very seriously. Indeed, we've just recently signed off on a comprehensive D&I strategy for the society. But we do recognise that there is always more that we can do to ensure that we have a sufficiently diverse board to proper represent the members and to bring that depth and richness of experience that you talk about. Now, whilst we do have good diversity in some areas, for example, by gender, to a certain extent by age and background, we recognise there is more to do. And We also recognise that we have opportunities to do so over the next few years. The current board will be retiring as each director reaches the end of their maximum terms, and diversity and inclusion will be high on the agenda as recruitment takes place to replace them. So thank you for the question. It's a very important one. Colin, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of points. When we signed off our diversity and inclusion strategy recently at our board meeting, we set ourselves some initial targets. Of course, diversity and inclusion have a number of different measures, but Mr. Bolton's question was mainly about ethnicity. We have 8% non-white employees at the Building Society. Actually, interestingly, that compares to Hinckley and Bosworth district, which is 3.5. But we've set ourselves an initial target that we would like to go into double figures to embrace different backgrounds and different ways of thinking for this organisation. In addition to that target, we set ourselves another one that said we will become a level 2 status disability confident employer. So that's very much in our mind. And also that we want to maintain our commitment to the Women in Finance Charter, which has helped us to go to 53% of our board and executive members of staff are female. So we're quite happy with that balance from a gender perspective.
Okay. Next question we had from the same person, second part of their question was, costs are spiralling. Whilst I do understand cost increases around security, etc., the website is still very poor. And even though you state that costs are in line with your competitors, can you expand on this? Back to you, Colin.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. And again, thank you, Mr. Bolton, for the excellent question. I have to say it's a question that I have an awful lot of sympathy with. I will be asking Colin to give a fuller answer to this, but I just would first of all like to say it's a really important question for the board. We recognise that every single penny that the society spends on running itself is a penny that we can't spend on improving rates for savers or borrowers. So we always question very hard any increases in costs. However, we are an organisation which continues to bear the burden of increasing costs of regulation. It remains a constant challenge, one which the board remains very engaged with. So I'd like Mr. Bolton to understand that increases in costs are not happening through negligence or ignorance, but rather after very careful and considered challenge. But Colin, perhaps I could ask you to expand on that answer a bit in a bit more detail.
Yes, I will. And one of the specific points that Mr. Bolton made was about our website being poor. And I don't think there's many staff, including myself, who would disagree with that point. However, we will be delivering a new website for the organisation over the summer of this year. We've signed the contract. We're working through just now how to make that as user-friendly, as effective as possible. And that will give us a much improved window to the outside world. Cost, I guess, is a number of different measures. On one basis, our cost-income ratio actually reduced in 2021 from 93% to 88%. But 88 is not something that we would be, dramatically proud of. Our actual costs increased in the year by 1.2 million. 600,000 of that was in staff costs. We have strengthened our staff base considerably, and we've had a net new 10 members of staff. So an increase in 10 in total staff over that period of time. So that was half of the costs. The other 600,000 is made up many of it investments in the organisation, on the phone system, initial costs to do with the website. We've also had over £100,000 increase in external assurance. Our sector is very heavily governed, very heavily regulated, and there is a cost to that, and we pay that knowing that it is actually making this a stronger organisation for the future. So just echoing Colin Franklin's thoughts, we do look at our costs very, very carefully. We will continue to invest in good cost, and we'll continue to try and chase away bad cost where we are ineffective or inefficient.
Had one third and final question, which our member would like to know more about our directors, and in particular, how the directors engage with members. Taking that one, Colin?
Shall I start with that one? Yes, I understand the question from Anita Evans. So thank you for the question. I understand it contains a number of points, and I know that Anita Evans is asking for, she says she wants a lot more information. So probably the better way of dealing with this would be directly engaging with her, and I think probably the Chief Executive will do that as a matter of course following the meeting. But she did raise a specific point about directors' engagement with members, and perhaps I can address some of that point now. I think she accuses of the directors of being absent, for example. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the directors are elected by members to represent them and to run the society in the long-term interests of those members. And we can do that to a certain extent because we're all members ourselves. But we always want to encourage members to engage with the board whenever we can. This AGM is an example. But there are lots of other examples where we continue to attempt to improve that member engagement, not always with the sort of successes we would really like. We've been hit very hard over the last 2 years with COVID, so that our programme of member engagement activities has been severely hampered. But for example, we run members' forums where we invited groups of members to discuss topics of interest. Myself and the Deputy Chair, David Woodward, had a regular schedule of branch visits where we engaged directly with members. All of our directors have regular schedules of regular visits to branches and head office departments where they engage with staff and obviously receive member feedback as well. So it's a constant battle, if you like, for us to get the sort of member engagement that we want. But I would just remind our members that our doors are always open. We welcome contact from any member at any time with your thoughts, ideas or questions, and we would be only too happy to engage with you. Colin, perhaps there might be some more you can add to that response.
Yeah, I think there is maybe 2 points I'd make. We're fortunate enough that we are a small enough organisation that we can get to know all our staff. And in the first day or the first couple of days, when any member of staff joins this society, they go through an induction programme. And I join every one to talk to them, tell them a bit about the society, find out a bit more about them. And Colin Franklin joins everyone as well. And we hope that that is something that those members of staff will remember. It's not every organisation that you join and on the first day you meet the chairman and you meet the chief executive. But that's an example of the engagement and the approach that we love to take internally, but also externally as well. I would say that the non-executive directors at Hinckley and Rugby are the most engaged group that I have worked with over more than 30 years of working, that really helps the executive team to know that those non-executive directors care. That means a lot to us in our daily job.
Okay, that ends the members' question bit, and I had no questions online. Was there? Wait for the microphone.
Here it comes.
Colin, you've already alluded, sorry, I should say, Stella Sage.
Hi, Stella.
You've already alluded to the uncertain conditions last year when Hinckley and Rugby were very cautious in their lending, impacting favourably on our financial position, but reducing the mortgage book. This year, we are facing another huge worldwide emergency stemming from the energy crisis. We are supposed to be growing the society, but maybe once again, the uncertain outlook will make this difficult, especially for applications from the lower paid. I'm wondering what the board's plans are for dealing with this. How will inflation impact on mortgage lending? And are there any ways to mitigate the situation, especially for those trying to get on the property ladder, particularly the young?
It's a very, very good question, Stella. I might sort of re-energise the double act of Colin Franklin saying a few words, and then I will also respond. Stella, Colin, would you like to kick off?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for an excellent question again. And you're absolutely right. You know, we are. I'm going to say entering a period of uncertainty, which seems that we've been in one for some time now, but a period of different uncertainty to what we've been used to. There's no doubt about it. It's going to bring challenges. I think during COVID, we have specific issues not only with the sort of economic aspects of the impacts of COVID, but the practical ones as well. In terms of how it impacted on our staffing arrangements, and you know, we had most of our staff working from home for large periods and so forth. That in itself led to us taking decisions about, for example, reducing some of our lending, so that we were more able to deal with it satisfactorily. Now, hopefully, those sort of challenges will have moved on a bit, and we're into a different set of challenges. But it should allow us to start to expand some of our lending, because we're able to deal with that lending, those lending applications when we receive them. We do accept, of course, that interest rates are rising, inflation is biting, and cost of living is forever increasing. All of those things will have impacts on our members' ability to borrow. And your society will just be very careful and prudent, as we always are, and we will always take into account the interests of those members, and making sure that we lend to people that can afford to repay, because there is no merit in doing anything else. So there's some sort of initial high-level thoughts on it. Colin, perhaps I can pass back to you now with your more detailed thoughts.
Yeah, Stella, there's three particular points I would make. Our mortgage book is in great shape going into this time. Cheryl is sitting with us tonight, who part of her responsibilities is the mortgage customers who need our support. And Cheryl and her team know those customers almost intimately, because we get close to understanding their circumstances, and in reality there is a small group of them. So we're well placed to start with. One of our key measures when we lend money is affordability, and we have a cushion of affordability. So if a customer says, I can afford this, here's all my information, there are two cushions that we use. One in terms of the net free pay and making sure that there's a buffer there should they perhaps underestimate their costs. And secondly, we do what we call a stress test on the interest rate. So if the interest rate on their mortgage increases by up to 3%, could they still afford it? And that's really important for us to make sure that we don't enter into a mortgage relationship with someone with the risk that they may not be able to afford it. I'd say the last point is that with helping people onto the housing ladder, one of the best things that I've seen this organisation do was when Carolyn Thornley Yates, who leads our mortgage proposition, created a joint borrower sole proprietor mortgage, which is not very common in the market. Basically, that means that a parent or a grandparent can go on to a mortgage to help their son or their daughter afford to buy that first property. And they're basically helping out on paper with their income to support that monthly payment if it's required. And that helps a lot of younger people to get on that housing ladder for the first time. But increasingly, it's actually helping older people, because perhaps an individual whose spouse has died, they may not be able to, on paper, afford that mortgage, but they want to stay there. They've got happy memories. They don't want to up sticks and move. So their son or daughter can join them on the mortgage for a period of time so that on paper they can afford those monthly payments. And that is proving really, really successful in helping young people and old to stay or buy the house of their dreams. Thanks, Stella.
Okay, is there any more questions? No? There's no questions online. So I think we're back to you, Colin, for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much. I just hope that this evening has not been too disjointed for people with our hybrid way of presenting. I found it quite novel, chairing a meeting where I can't see anybody. But thank you very much for your support, and I will now declare the meeting closed, and I wish you all well.